Great. Excellent. Let's get started. Good evening. I'm Jay-Ann Rock. I will be your host tonight. I am the Director of Information and Education for the DCM Foundation. And we're very excited to bring you some information tonight with updates about the DCM Foundation and our plans for the future. So I think you'll really enjoy tonight's webinar. Next slide, please. And just a reminder, everyone's microphones are on mute, just so that we can hear the speakers. Tonight's webinar is about the DCM Foundation's progress to date and hope for the future. And again, we're thrilled you could be here. Next slide. So just a quick recap of our history. The DCM Foundation was actually created in 2018 by Greg Roof, a DCM patient, and Dr. Ray Hirschberger, a leader in the field of genetic cardiomyopathy. And our mission is to provide hope and support to patients and families with DCM through education, advocacy, and research. And our goal, particularly as we go forward, is really to create better health equity for all patients. That's a key goal of ours, and you'll see that in some of our plans that Greg will outline for you in tonight's presentation. And we're thrilled to announce, for those who haven't seen it yet, we have two new websites, a full Spanish version of the DCM Foundation website and a full Spanish version of the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Awareness Consortium website. So again, with health equity being top of mind, and we really want to provide these resources for all kinds of folks. So stay tuned. We have a lot to share with you tonight. Next slide. The first thing we want to do is review the topics for tonight. As I said, we're going to talk about the history and growth of DCM Foundation and why we created the DCM Foundation, and then why we created GCAC. And for those of you who don't know, GCAC stands for the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Awareness Consortium, all about genetic awareness with regards to cardiomyopathy. We will review our progress to date on our 3 pillars. And then we'll talk quite a bit in some depth about what must be accomplished in the near future. We have a lot of goals and plans, and we're excited to share those tonight. And then we'll have an open QA and feedback session. Next slide. So we have our first poll tonight, which is, who is attending tonight's webinar? Are you a cardiomyopathy patient, a family member, friend, a medical professional, or industry professional? And if you could push that poll forward, Justine. Thank you. And so just take a quick minute to answer. It's always interesting to see who's joining us. I would expect this is patient heavy tonight. Great. And let's end the poll and share the results. So almost 60% are cardiomyopathy patients, and then another 13% family members or friend. 17% medical professional, and 13% industry. Excellent. Thank you all for joining us. I'm really excited you could be here. So let's get on with tonight's webinar. First, many of you already know Greg, but for those who don't, and we always have some new folks in the mix, Greg is the founder and executive director of the DCM Foundation. And I'm not going to read every line here, but basically, Greg was diagnosed with DCM in 2014. And he had an ICD implanted. And then he had genetic testing done, revealing that he had several mutations, genetic mutations responsible for his DCM. And he has family members who carry some of those genetic mutations as well. He then retired from his work in business and launched the DCM Foundation. And his hope is that by raising awareness and supporting all genetic cardiomyopathy research, a means will be found to hopefully one day stop or reverse or maybe even completely prevent DCM from developing in at-risk individuals. And we're starting to make some strides in that. We're very excited about the work that we have to share with you tonight. On July 15th, 2021, so coming up on almost 3 years now, Greg had a successful heart transplant, and we're thrilled he could be with us tonight. And he lives in Ohio with his wife of 34, almost 35 years. And together they have 3 grown children and 5 grandchildren. So without further ado, Greg, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And I'll hand it over to you. The floor is yours.
Great. Thanks, Jayanne, and thanks, Justine, who is behind the scenes. We have a little bet before each webinar how many people will show up, and I'm looking at the number of participants, and I'm the winner. So I'm very thrilled about that. Thanks for showing up today. Next screen, please. Those of you may have seen this before. I'm going to run through my family's history of dilated cardiomyopathy and genetic cardiomyopathy. Not to give you the story, but to sort of, indicate that, as I started the DCM Foundation, as we work in this, I've experienced, a lot of facets of what patients go through. First of all, had issues like many of you at a young age, at 17, running, and it was, of course, they didn't know about it, wasn't diagnosed back in 1982. 2004, they did an echocardiogram, and I had a reduced ejection fraction. They didn't do anything about it. Again, I think most of you, as I've talked to many of you, were undiagnosed for many years. Finally, formally diagnosed a week before my 50th birthday, and had all sorts of stuff, reduced ejection fraction, third-degree heart block, left bundle branch block. And then they found out I was genetically tested and found that there was a genetic basis for my dilated cardiomyopathy. And then next screen, please, Justine. And then I also have experienced 3 ICDs, very low ejection fraction, ventricular tachycardia, atachycardia, PVCs, was on amiodarone, been hospitalized. I've had an ablation. I've had multiple cardioversions, and then was transplanted in 2021. So a lot there, but I think the basis is I've in being in this role, I'm actually thankful for that, because I've got to experience a lot of things that you as patients are experiencing. And hopefully that gives the DCM Foundation and myself a better perspective of what you might be going through. Next slide, please. And then it's, again, a big motivation for me as a patient, as a father, as a grandfather, is that this does run in my family. It's affected a number of people in my family, my children, and potentially my grandchildren. And so, a big goal of our foundation, of the entire board, myself, Jayanne, everybody that works at the foundation, really is to see how we can help patients, and what can we do to help researchers and biopharma companies create potential life-saving therapies. Huge motivation in my life right now. Next slide, please. The foundation, you've probably seen this before, is built on 3 pillars. One is information and education, and you can see a lot of the things that we're doing there: newsletters, webinars, website, social media. Providing patient family support, support groups, conference, resource information, engaging in specialists. A lot of our webinars will have that. And then the third pillar is genetic awareness. And again, with supporting these 3 pillars that we need to be able to help patients and families, is obviously we've got to run a business. We have to have board, oversight, governance, budgets, fundraising, cash reserves for rainy days, all types of things. So that's a bit about the DCM Foundation. Justine, next slide, please. And so we started in 2018 and really just spent the first couple of years, with just very part-time volunteer help. And we really wanted to put out a really good website in the first couple of years about dilated cardiomyopathy. I think we did. It's a great website. Kudos to a lot of the folks that helped on that and the board members that helped on that. And really about June, July 2020, we started, being aggressive in marketing the foundation. And we're doing a lot of the efforts that you see below, that you've seen. Obviously, you're here, you're getting our materials, social media, SEO, Google AdWords, partnership with medical groups, biopharma, academic researchers. But really a crux to what we're working on, and I'm a big believer, is in partnerships. And as you'll see later with GCAC, and we think in order, no group, all of the groups in this area are small. We have to work together to really fully serve patients and get the message out. That includes patient groups, includes medical practitioners, it includes researchers. So a real focus on our growth that has been and always will be in the future is growing through partnerships. Next slide, please. A little bit on pillar one, what we've accomplished to date, and we're just about there. Projected this year is 4,100 folks in our newsletter, people that have signed up and said, hey, send me information monthly. And we're just almost at that number right now. We're just about also at 6,700 webinar registers over the last 4 years. Really, really excited about that. We're getting close to 200 website visitors a day. Our dilated cardiomyopathy public and private Facebook groups are just about at 10,000. And in the realm of partnership, we've also created partnerships with other large Facebook groups, congestive heart failure, cardiomyopathy, transplant, groups like that, where we have partnerships that we can interact with, cross-post, that reach another 70,000 people. And as Jan mentioned, we're really, really excited. Health equity is a huge part of this. And one of the reasons that we're doing the webinar tonight is I was talking to my marketing person a month or so ago and talking about some of the things we're talking about tonight. He said, Greg, you never mentioned that to me. I'm like, oh, goodness, we need to get on and sort of explain what our focus is, where we've been and where we're going. So health equity is a huge, as Jan mentioned, focus of ours. We just recently launched a full Spanish version of the DCM Foundation website and the GCAC website, which is geneticcardiomyopathy.org. I see Fred is on tonight. We'd like to thank one of our patient and great donor, Fred Micheny. Hope I didn't butcher your name there. In his company that actually converted the websites for us and donated all that effort. Thank you so much, Fred and team. Next slide, please. We struggle, how do we help patients? And as we talk with a lot of the groups in our arena, servicing heart failure, cardiomyopathy, different types of cardiomyopathy, patients and family members, we all were having trouble getting people to show up on monthly meetings, weekly meetings, certain date, certain time. And so what we found, though, is that people really like to be supported through social media, with some touch, with some meetings every now and again, with some learning content. But the real interaction, as we see in almost 10,000 person dilated cardiomyopathy public and private Facebook groups, people love interacting in social media. So we've been actively this year in creating and partnering with groups for gene-specific cardiomyopathy, gene-specific Facebook groups. And because we realized that people like to be associated with, like to get information from, share information with people with the same gene mutation. And so we've created, I think, 5 or 6 of our own. We're partnering with Dan and LAMP2 Gene, Lemonade Cardiac and the Lemonade Facebook group, and Team Titan. We appreciate their partnership in this. We're going to be continuing to grow these Facebook groups. If you have a gene that is not on here and you would be interested in starting a Facebook group and being the admin for us, please email us at either gruf@dcmfoundation.org or info@dcmfoundation.org, and we will work with you on maybe facing and starting more groups. We'd love to have all 70 genes represented in the next 3 or 4 years. Next slide, please. And actually go back, Justine, I missed something, I apologize. The other thing is, not only did patients like to get support, but with this, as we're going to create additional research in potential life-saving therapies, we've got to get more patients involved up front, willing to be in research programs and willing to be in clinical trials. And we think that actually by having, 300 people in a certain gene in a Facebook group that might be interested someday in a research study or clinical trial, that we might be able to speed up the process of research and creating life-saving therapies. So that's another reason why we're doing it. These Facebook groups. Justine, next slide, please. You know, and when we look at the third pillar, which is genetic cardiomyopathy awareness, started speaking pretty heavily to a lot of researchers and you know, patients, started talking to a number of pharma companies with interest in this area. And what we found that there was a lot of interest in genetic cardiomyopathy research and the development of potential therapies. We also discovered that when you look at this, we're the DCM Foundation, but a lot of the genes, I'm going to show you a chart in a minute, actually could show up as HCM. They can show up as DCM. They can have arrhythmogenic components. So from a genetic cardiomyopathy basis, you can't really talk specifically about HCM, ACM, DCM, LVNC, you know, because there's a lot of crossover. So we looked at that and said, hey, if we're going to do this, we need to do this on a cardiomyopathy-wide basis. We also found that about up to 50% of cardiomyopathy is caused by genetic mutations, but only 1% of diagnosed cardiomyopathy patients are genetically tested. And again, back to, you know, health equity, most of those are large academic institutions, which tend to many times lack in health equity. Next slide, please. So here's a look at sort of the genes that are related in cardiomyopathy. And I think Dr. Hirschberger's on. And so Ray, thank you for this. We overuse this slide, but it's great. Again, it shows you all the different genes that are known to be involved in genetic cardiomyopathy. There's some channelopathies to the lower right too, where we know at least one gene that interacts, but there potentially could also be other genes in the future. There also are many undiscovered genes. So there's more genes, researchers haven't found them yet. So here's an interesting, and again, it shows the interconnectivity of the genes and why when you are looking at genetics, you really have to attack it on a cardiomyopathy-wide basis. Next slide, please. So, you know, how do we attack the problem of genetics and cardiomyopathy and helping patients? So in 2022, we began building a coalition of cardiomyopathy patient groups, one, to better educate patients about genetics and cardiomyopathy. Go back to that 1%, you know, 50% of cardiomyopathy probably has some type of genetic basis, only 1% get tested. So there's a huge gap there. So we knew that we needed to be able to increase that gap, and it could save people's lives. I'll talk about that by getting tested, even though you're still diagnosed with cardiomyopathy. You know, we're working hard. You'll see more about it later, about providing easier, more affordable path for patients and family members for genetic testing and genetic counseling. And there also needs to be, through partnerships, a lot of education in the cardiology medical community. Believe it or not, most cardiologists really still do not understand genetics, the role they play, and do not have good pathways to help patients in this arena. So 2022 or 2023, we worked with 8 patient groups, our board at the DCM Foundation, and a number of pharma companies to create a new group. Next slide, please, Justine. The Genetic Cardiomyopathy Awareness Consortium. And the reason why we started that is the reason why we're so interested in put so many resources in this area. As you all know, right now, there is no cure for cardiomyopathy. And we believe that gene therapy, not everybody agrees, but it is a strong hope for this in creating potential life-saving therapies the fastest. Not guaranteed. There are risks with it, of course, with anything. But we think that this is a great path of being able to help patients and potentially save the most lives the fastest. And again, we also believe by getting more patients and families genetically tested, this will also save lives and help quicken the pace of gene therapy development. Next slide, please. Here's another poll, and we want to understand, so nobody can call me out. Hopefully everybody says none or very little. Just kidding. we'd like you to describe your level of understanding of genetic therapies. None, very little, some basic knowledge, more than the average bear, or expert knowledge. We'd love you to take the poll, Justine, if you could share that now. Thank you. Let's show the results. So again, it's interesting. We've got some experts. We've got more than the average bear, and the most of some basic knowledge, very little. Kind of the perfect bell curve here, basically. So interesting. We have a mixed bag of folks. Next slide, please. Again, as we mentioned, we decided the best way to attack genetic cardiomyopathy is through the Genetic Cardiomyopathy Awareness Consortium. And we've had a lot of success since then. It's grown a lot. Next slide, please. Here's a sort of our partners, sponsors, patient groups, corporate sponsors, additional partners in the medical community. And so we're very excited that we've been able to build such a large coalition of groups in this space to help tackle the issue of genetics and cardiomyopathy. And we thank each of our partners greatly for working with us. Next slide, please. Again, I've mentioned several times, but there's a huge gap. 50% cardiomyopathy has some type of genetic basis, and that percentage is going to go up, right? It used to be 0, 10, 20, 30, up to 50. They say now it's gonna increase as we learn more, we discover more genes and learn more about genetic cardiomyopathy. But only 1% gets genetically tested. So why is that bad? Again, I think I mentioned there's sort of two reasons for that. One, for instance, how do you save lives? So if you've been diagnosed with idiopathic cardiomyopathy, the guidelines with American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology, and the Heart Failure Society of America is that you should be genetically tested. And the reason being, one of the reasons it could affect your treatment can also save your life. So we know 25 to 35% of cardiomyopathy genes have some type of arrhythmogenic component that can cause dangerous arrhythmia or sudden cardiac death. And so if you have diagnosed with cardiomyopathy and you have a gene that is known to cause these arrhythmias, you're more likely for your heart failure specialist and or electrophysiologist to ask to put an ICD in to potentially save you. And it also, if you have that and you get your family members tested, they can be watched to make sure that heart failure is not starting. And if it is, that they can start drug treatment early, which will prolong you being healthy much longer. Or if they start seeing some arrhythmias in that observation every year or two, they could actually also get an ICD. This could save potentially hundreds, thousands of people's lives every year. And again, as I mentioned before, in order for the research community to better understand genetics and cardiomyopathy, we just need a lot more people to be in research studies and to be tested, to be in research studies and clinical trials. It's really, really important that this happens. Next slide, please. So we'll take a look at the sort of 2023 with GCAC and where we're going through the end of 2025. Next slide, please. And again, one thing that I have not mentioned, if you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A. We'll address them at the end. But again, if you have any questions or thoughts that you'd like to communicate with people, feel free to add them in the Q&A portion of the Zoom. So a little overview of the GCAC project is that we started the US campaign and website, launched March 8th, 2023 at www.geneticcardiomyopathy.org. And we started with the DCM Foundation and 7 other patient groups. We launched this campaign globally with the Global Heart Hub late June 2023. We created, we think, compelling videos, additional genetic content late 2023 that I'll show in a minute. And then we've also launched in late 2023, 2024 to date, the GCAC Advocacy Army and Toolkit. We've created, as I mentioned before, the gene-specific groups and want to continue to grow those greatly, and launched the Spanish version, as well as the DCM Foundation launched a Spanish version of the GCAC website just a month or 2 ago. Next slide, please. So what are we looking for the rest of this year and into 2025? So one of the projects that we're working on is with the Heart Failure Society of America. They're raising money. We're helping them raise money and partnering with them on a program called Reimagine HF. Is initially to do some research to understand how heart failure docs, nurses, and nurse practitioners understand genetics and cardiomyopathy and how they're utilizing it for testing and treatment. And then to create an outreach campaign to better educate these folks in the heart failure community about genetics and cardiomyopathy, and hopefully to teach them better pathways for testing and also for better treatment for genetic cardiomyopathy patients. We also are working with, and we'll have some more information on this a little more, with JScreen, a part of Emory University, to hopefully launch a cardiomyopathy genetic testing counseling service in early 2025. The folks there, Matt Goldstein, with them have been great to work with. It's not a done deal, but we're working diligently, and we're thrilled that they want to partner with us. The number 7 is that we are working with NORD, National Organization of Rare Disease. They work with about 60 patient groups to have gene-specific rare disease patient registries. We're creating a GCAC cardiomyopathy, genetic cardiomyopathy patient registry for all genes in the genetic cardiomyopathy space. We're scheduled to launch that in Q4 of this year, 2024. And working with NORD has been a great experience so far, and we really appreciate it. And shout out to our board president, who is actually out of the continent at this point, Kathy Grispel, for spearheading this project and being our initial PI on the program. And with everything that we're doing, we want to look at global expansion through partnerships. We don't want to expand globally, but as we talk about working on the past project with Global Heart Hub and other groups, everything that we're doing, we'll start in the US, but we'll look for partners to share data, to share marketing opportunities, because whatever we do ought to have some type of global basis with us. Next slide, please. Again, how do we reach out? How do we promote the awareness and our resources? As I mentioned before, a lot of our success with GCAC has been through our other 7 partner groups. Thank you to all of them. I know they post a lot of stuff about GCAC, but I think a lot of our success to date has been through them. It's obviously been through our social media and marketing. Jayanne, Sam, Buddy, Nikki, our team that works on all of our marketing and social media have done a great job. And you see a lot of our ads and campaigns. Thanks to Stephanie and the Dilated Cardiomyopathy 2 Facebook groups with almost 10,000 people, and the other Facebook groups that have almost 70,000 people has been great. Thanks to Christy for work on the gene-specific groups. This is how this great, kind of part-time team of people behind the scenes are helping us get to you, that work really, really hard. I think you've done a great job. And then also all the work that we've done on our website, Pam in Group. Thank you very much for your work. And again, Jayanne, much thanks to her. She coordinates all of our outreach and everything, and she does a great job. So this is how we're reaching folks. This is how we're reaching you. If you have any questions, suggestions, you want to talk about that, better ways we can reach you and others, happy to talk about it at the end of the webinar. And also, we're doing magazine articles, press releases, things like that. Next slide, please. Little impact through 2023. The numbers are greater than this. We just haven't tracked them in the last 6 months, 7 months or so. But we've had over 2.5 million impressions and over 500,000 reach in our US GCAC Facebook reach. We've had over 1,300 webinar registrants, 14 countries, 400 plus live attendees, 4,100 webinar recordings. Excited about that. Again, through our wonderful partnership with Global Heart Hub, they just did a week-long campaign, but this campaign, Genetic Cardiomyopathy Campaign, was published in 10 languages, promoted actively to 31 countries, had over 307,000 followers, 8.3 million opportunities to view, and potential media reach of 128 million. And again, we're creating the videos, compelling messages that we hope get stronger and better. Next slide, Justine, please. Here is a video. We're going to show a couple videos now. Here's a couple videos and of some of the marketing content we've created. Jan, I cannot hear the video. Excuse me, audio.
Sorry, I'm not sure why it's not translating through.
Did you click the share sound?
Yep. I'll just try it one more time.
Okay, let me see if I can link mine.
There's always got to be one thing that goes wrong. It's normally me.
Audio settings. You can also go to our YouTube channel, the DCM Foundation YouTube channel, and these are the videos that we're trying to share are all there, and they're very impactful and emotional. In case we don't get them up, I will just add that my husband, I made him watch all these videos this morning for the first time that he'd actually seen them all, and he got teared up and he said, wow, he said, this is really impactful. So I do encourage people to go to our YouTube channel. You just look up the DCM Foundation, and there are several on here, all patient focused. There's also another that Anna Morales is a genetic counselor. She talks all about the importance of genetic testing in cardiomyopathy. So again, Justine, are you able to get that up? If not, we can.
Yeah, let me try and see how we go with this. Give me one second.
My apologies, guys.
It was a 4 or 5 year window where periodically I would get dehydrated. I would take a hot shower, I'm feeling great, I'd get out and bang, I would pass out, hit the floor, and there was no answer. Dr. Brown came back and said, listen, I have good and bad news. The results were great, but you're in the middle of congestive heart failure. You know, I just remember getting there and I'm in the ICU unit, and they said, we're gonna have to get you a new heart. And it's probably gonna take 6 to 9 months for us to find that heart. The nurse, he woke me up and his tears were dripping onto my gown. And I'm like, what's wrong? Like, you okay? He's like, I've been here 40 years, I'm about to retire, and I've never seen anything happen this fast. My heart came in 3 days. It was like a miracle. I need to find a way to say that I can be here for a longer amount of time, primarily not for myself, but for my children. Right? I want to enjoy the Christmases. I want to enjoy the outdoor barbecues. God has given me another chance, and I'm going to take it. I couldn't feel any better. I'm walking a couple miles a day. I'm working at a golf course now. My children are with me. My family is with me. I would encourage everyone to get tested, whether or not you've gone through this process or not. I did not see this coming.
Growing up, I was exposed to children who had developmental disabilities, and that ignited in me not only a curiosity, but also I felt a deep sense of empathy with their families. There was very little known about cardiovascular genetics. I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. A genetic counselor would be the person who provides not only information about someone's risk to have or transmit a genetic condition to their children, but also help them adapt to a new diagnosis, to communicate with family members about the genetic risk, and to be a support person along the way. Genetic testing can guide management and can guide treatment for the affected patient themselves. And I think that genetic testing offers clinicians, cardiologists, and nursing professionals the ability to improve their ability to provide a very tailored diagnosis to their patient that will guide their treatment. It can save lives because when someone looks healthy but carries a genetic predisposition, they may not know until it's too late.
Thank you.
Thanks, Justine. She'll share the deck back in now.
Perfect. Thanks,
Great.
Jane. Thanks, Justine. Thanks, Mel. Thanks, Anna. Anna, I think you're on tonight. Thank you. And thanks to all the help. Stephanie, Chris, Adam, his wife, my wife, Brenda, and Buddy Nikki and the team that put those together. Really, really great jobs. A little more about the next steps for what we're working on with GCAC. Next slide, please, Justine. As I've mentioned several times, we're certainly working on the gene-specific groups. We'll continue to do that. We are also, continue to upgrade with videos and in our advocacy army. I think our outreach to patients and giving you, the patient, family members, the ability to reach out on our behalf to create more of a viral campaign. As I talked before, also, working to grow our gene-specific groups. Next slide, please. You can see that, if you would like to gather the information, videos, articles, information, ads to share to your community, social media, LinkedIn, your doctors or medical providers for cardiomyopathy, family, friends, we suggest that you go to www.geneticcardiomyopathy.org and search Join the Fight. And we'd love for you to take these tools and share a message to the world. Please do so. Next slide, please. Outreach to the medical community, I mentioned before, we're working with Heart Failure Society of America on Reimagine HF, where it's their program, but we're sort of the patient voice in that program. We're really excited about working with them and the hopefully soon launch of that program. Again, we're also working with groups, other medical groups like PCNA, National Society of Genetic Counselors, American Consortium of Heart Failure Nurses, AVCPR, which is cardiac rehab, the Cardio Genetic Testing Alliance, again, to get the word out about genetics and cardiomyopathy. And what we serve in that is sort of your voice, the patient voice to the medical communities in that outreach. We always want to make sure that the patient is heard. Next slide, please. Again, as I mentioned before, also that we're working with JScreen out of Emory University to hopefully potentially roll out a nationwide genetic testing, cardiomyopathy, and counseling service that would allow people to take tests from their home. One thing we don't like about genetic testing now, the cost varies depending on the deal that your health insurance company has worked out with the genetic testing company. We want to see upfront affordable pricing, and we would love to be able to have testing. We'd love to be able to have reduced price or free testing if we could actually get funding for that. But we realize that's a problem. It's something that needs to be solved. It needs to get better for patients. And we also realize that, and JScreen has a service, nationwide 50-state genetic counseling service, that once you get the result, it's really, really important that you have a conversation about the result and what to do next for you and your family in treatment with a qualified genetic counselor. Next slide, please. Again, as I mentioned prior, again, and kudos to Dr. Kathy Kerspel from our board that's working with us on this, is we're creating a cardiomyopathy, genetic cardiomyopathy registry, so that patients could be potentially available for further research and clinical trials. By registering, you do not have to make yourself available for research or clinical trials. But we realize most people that register for these things, 95% of the time that they actually do. And we're working with NORD, National Organization of Rare Disorders, in this venture. And we're looking at Q4 of this year to actually launch this program, and you'll see more information on that. Next slide. And as we mentioned, as we look with any programs that we're doing, we want to partner with other groups globally. They may not be the exact same services, but we ought to be able to share data. We ought to be able to share contact and string these things together to make more of a global presence than just on a country by country basis. Next slide, please. And again, our mission at the foundation, of myself, all board members, and all the consultants and employees that work with us, is to find a way to best help DCM and genetic cardiomyopathy patients and their family members best deal with this disease physically and emotionally, and hopefully be part of creating a cure faster for this devastating and deadly disease. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Great. Thanks so much, Greg. And thank you, Justine, for saving us from ourselves.
Yes. Normally Jan's saving me from myself. That's normally how the game's played. So
I get a break tonight. Anyhow, no, thank you so much. We have so many exciting things going on. It's really an exciting time to be part of this organization. And that's one thing that I love, is that there's so much to learn. I mean, and just when we think we've figured some stuff out, then we realize how much more there is to learn. So if you have any questions, any comments, any feedback, please drop it into the Q&A feature. We really want to hear from you. We do have one question that would be a great question if we had a cardiologist on, but the question is, my son has dilated cardiomyopathy. She and her husband were genetically tested, but both tested negative. So what are other causes of cardiomyopathy? And there are a number of things that could be caused by, I will say, and I'll let you answer this, Greg, because you're better probably at this than I. We do know of instances, certainly Stephanie Fallon, who runs the 2 DCM Facebook groups and some of the gene-specific groups, she was identified as, I forgot what it's called, but it's like the initial person who had that gene in her family. And so sometimes it's not inherited. Sometimes it can be a gene that starts somehow, but often there are viruses or other things that can cause cardiomyopathy. Greg, do you want to add?
Yeah, and if you could email me, gruf@dcmfoundation.org, gruf@dcmfoundation.org. I'd love to talk to you about it, get some more information, and hopefully point you in the right direction. Now, again, I'm not a cardiologist, but I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night. I think, it's complicated. I can see Dr. Hirschberger squirming in his chair with me answering this right now, but it's very, very complicated. But also, I mean, there are genes that are causing cardiomyopathy or dilated cardiomyopathy right now. We just don't know what they are. We haven't found out what they are. So a lot of people may get the disease and not test positive for a gene just because they haven't been discovered. They're kind of at the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, in research on this. But I would love to, if you would email me, we can have a conversation, learn more, and then hopefully point you in the right direction. But it is complicated. There's a lot we don't know yet. But I think with any, getting the full story out, getting all the full information would be great. And we'd be happy to get back with you and hopefully point you in the right direction. And again, I think any of you that have questions at any time, email Jan, me, info@dcmfoundation.org. We'd love to answer any questions that you have, or if you have suggestions, what else can we be doing? Or if you want to criticize Jan if she's not doing something correctly, don't criticize me because I don't take it well. But I'm joking. But if you have any, criticisms or suggestions, we're happy to hear from you. So, Jan,
Great.
any
She
questions?
said she'd be in touch. I will just add that Fred just said thank you for all you're doing, and he's very excited about the future plans and so forth. And I will just again thank Fred for all of his help and contributions to help make our Spanish websites available. He and his team really did a yeoman's effort to assist in all of that. So that was fantastic.
Great. Any other questions? I want to give a shout out here. If that's
And he says, anytime. Go ahead. You go ahead, Greg.
June 12th, I'll be up and say hello. So if you might see, there's 3 bottles of whiskey on the back. Not that I drink, nor I recommend that any cardiomyopathy patient drinks, but shout out to my cousin Beth, got me a customized bottle. The bottle that I'm pointing to now has got my name and the date of my transplant, and she and her husband Jeff have been wonderful enough to actually follow up at each anniversary with a new bottle. And I have had the discipline not to drink it yet, so I don't know how long that's going to last. So thanks, Beth and Jeff, for that.
Hopefully you'll have 30 bottles by the time you're done.
That's true. That's true. Thanks. Any other thoughts or questions? And again, this is a little bit different webinar, but
Okay.
I got a couple, the board's like, oh, I didn't know we were doing that. And a marketing person's like, we're talking about health equity. And he's like, what? We've not really talked about health equity. It's like, we need to have a webinar to talk about all the things that we're doing and let everybody know what we're doing. And again, as I mentioned before, the health equity piece is huge. And if you also have any suggestions on how we might help underserved communities, underserved populations in our outreach, anything that we're doing, please let us know. I mean, that continues to be a large focus of what we're doing and a growing focus of what we're doing. So please give us any suggestions. We would appreciate it very much.
Yes, thank you so much. I think, well, if there are any other questions that come up, please do email us, info@dcmfoundation.org. JRock, that's me, JROCK @dcmfoundation.org. Yeah, and we're always around, so happy to help, answer any questions. If you have any thoughts, if there's anybody out there who wants to partner with us, work on new things. Bethany said we did a great job, and she's just really appreciative for the partnership. So yeah, it's just amazing. I will just say, watching, I'm just going to give a shout out to you, Greg, which I shouldn't because your head's going to get even bigger. But like watching Greg build this in the last 4 years has been like remarkable. I'm like, oh, I should have taken more notes. I should write a book someday about like the experience watching this. Because of Greg's background as an entrepreneur, it has just lent itself perfectly to this, and to build and build and build things out into the ethosphere that don't exist has just been remarkable to watch and just exciting thing to be a part of. And really it's through leveraging conversations and partnerships. And I remember 4 years ago when we started, when I first started with the foundation, we just were trying to have conversations with people. We were just trying to have conversations with anyone and everyone who would talk with us, who we could listen to, learn from, who would listen to us. And now we're here, and it's just fantastic. So Greg, you're the perfect person to be doing this.
Thank you. Thank you. We've just begun though. We've just begun. So
Yep.
Thanks,
so thank you,
everybody.
everyone. Really appreciate everyone being here tonight. Take care. Have a good rest of the week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Justine. Bye-bye.